West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
At the end of any of our readings, we customarily add the phrase, offered as wisdom for the journey. And we invite you to respond with the phrase, may we walk in its light. This is simply an invitation, not an order. And we have just one reading today, which is a quote from Amy C. Edmondson. And it goes, all of us have at one point or another spontaneously attributed unflattering motives, traits, or abilities to those who disagree with our strongly held views. Our own views seem so right that the disagreement of others seems irrational, or worse, deliberately unhelpful. We are all prone to naive realism. That's a term coined by psychologist Lee Ross, which is a person's unshakable conviction that he or she is somehow privy to an invariant, knowable, objective reality, a reality that others will also perceive faithfully, provided they are reasonable and rational. So, when others misperceive our reality, we conclude that it must be because they are unreasonable or irrational, and view the world through a prism of self-interest, ideological bias, or personal perversity. And therein lies the trouble. Offered as wisdom for the journey. May we walk in its light.
Of our speaker today.
Okay, Babette. Our speaker today is Scott Campbell, and he is a highly successful consultant, facilitator, keynote speaker, and author. He is an executive partner and co-founder of Blue Dot Strategy and a co-founder of the FutureWise Leadership Program. He has focused his work on leadership development and strategy. Over the last 20 years, Scott has consulted with and provided leadership development for leaders from such companies as Hamilton Health Sciences, Siemens, FedEx, Nike, Toyota, Healthcare of Ontario Pension Plan, Scotiabank, Bayer, Merit Care Hospital, Ceridian P&G, and Spectra Energy. In addition to his work in Canada, he has spoken and consulted in the US, France, Belgium, Germany, Spain, Denmark, and Hong Kong. He is a former instructor in the Schulich School of Business Executive Education Center and qualifying instructor for the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and Interstrength Associates Personality Type Certification Program. He is also a Level 3 Master Facilitator for and consultant on the origin of personality dimensions. So not a lot, really. His formal education includes a certificate in strategic decision-making and risk management from Stanford University, a certificate in designing solutions for innovation and strategy from Weatherhead School of Management, a certificate in human systems dynamics, and an MDiv degree in organizational leadership from Tyndale College. Whew. He's the author of several books that focus on leadership, decision-making, neuro-engagement, and peak performance. And his big question is, how can we harness the power, capabilities, and influence of for-profit businesses to help create a future that is good for the planet and all its inhabitants? Outside of work, Scott amazingly finds the time to be an avid walker, a reading addict, a craft beer enthusiast, a die-hard Jeopardy watcher, a curling and tennis fan, oh yes, and a husband, dad, and friend. And I've been asked to especially thank you, Scott, for sharing time with West Hill, with outlining the leadership jobs descriptions. We are all, directly or indirectly, very grateful to you, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to the room and onto Zoom at West Hill.
Begged Chris not to read that whole thing, but somehow I lost. So I sound very good, don't I? Well, not everybody at West Hill has such a high opinion of me, it seems. I ended up being sent an email chain from people at West Hill who were talking with each other about me appearing here again. And so until this point in my life, I thought Debbie Ellis was my friend. And then I read how she described me to people on this email chain. So he's a pretty good speaker most of the time, although not super memorable, and everyone has off days. He's written a few things here and there, but who hasn't? He's generally all right as a person overall, I guess. And West Hill people seem to like him okay. But then again, it's been a while. Should be fine, though. So thank you, Debbie, for those words of... Yeah, so that was pretty hilarious, I thought. It was actually Debbie that sent it to me, so...
And totally sarcastic, as you might imagine.
Yeah, I hope people pick that up. Anyways, you have on your seat a little handout that we'll be referencing, and those of you who in Zoom land, I believe you are being sent that same diagram. So if not, then you can contact Annie, and she'll be able to send you a PDF of it. When Jean, where are you? You were reading, there you are. You were reading from VisionWorks. You made the comment that words can move us. I want to extend that thought a little bit to say that I believe that conversation is the primary tool for building community. And that leads me to conclude that the character of our conversation is directly related to, and it determines the quality of our community building. The nature of the conversations that we have determine our capacity to grow quality community. Now, that's a fundamental, and I kind of assume that you all agree with that, so I'm not going to belabor that point. What I do want to do is to try to turn that into some very practical ideas that we can all use to build stronger community. Whether that community is your family, whether it is the community of West Hill United, or whether it are the groups to which you belong, where building strong community is an important element of why that group exists. The quote that you heard earlier from Amy Edmondson reveals one of the challenges that we have in trying to have really effective conversation that builds community. And that is that there are some innate tendencies that we possess simply because how we've evolved as humans that often get in the way of having strong community. So in the work that Elizabeth, my wife, and I do in leadership development, we have created a framework for leaders to use, but for anyone to use in order to have better conversations. And that's the framework that I want to kind of work you through quickly. Now, one of the advantages, whether we're on Zoom or whether in this room, is that we can interact with each other. And I almost want to treat this like a workshop that we would do using this framework. So you're going to have opportunities to either ask questions or make comments as we go through this, including those of you who are out there in Zoom land. So if we can unblank the screen for me. If we can unblank the screen for me. The framework that we are going to look at is one that we call mental postures. Now, Elizabeth and I were talking about on the way down as we drove in this morning about it's very interesting that in the military, when people are called to this position, this posture, the word that is used is attention. We know from our own experience that our physical posture has a great deal to do with our level of energy and where we are focusing our attention. So pay attention, sit up straight. That's a command, sit up straight. So adjust your body so that you are in a more alert place. That's why it's not helpful at church to slouch, because it does tend to lead to sleeping during the services, so it's not a useful thing. We know that our physical posture has a direct impact on our ability to pay attention, our level of energy, and the same is true of what we are going to be calling mental postures. These are overarching frames of reference that we are using when we interact with other people, when we have conversations. Most of the time, these are unconscious. We are not thinking about, oh, how am I approaching this? Which mental posture am I adopting? And in fact, a lot of the work that we do with leaders is taking that which is unconscious and making it conscious so that we can choose more intentionally. Your mental posture refers to sort of your overarching intention in the conversation. What are you actually trying to accomplish in having an interaction with another individual or within a group? What I want to do is work you through what we have defined as 5 different possible mental postures. I'll talk briefly about each of them as to what it is, and then I'm going to show you a short video that gives you a demonstration of that posture in action, and then we'll talk briefly about what did you see in that video. So, in other words, pay attention to the videos because you'll have a chance to interact with that. And then towards the latter part of my talk this morning, I'm going to talk about, so what do we do with this? This is very nice theory. How do we translate that into practical action? So, we will begin with an overview of the framework itself. There we go. This is what you have on your diagram on your sheet, and you'll notice that there are 3 elements to this. The center is, where is your attention during the interaction? And again, that can either be conscious or unconscious. The upper stripe talks about what is your view of reality that you are bringing to this conversation. And then the bottom stripe refers to your sense of identity, your sense of self-perception. And you'll see that for each of these 3 different elements, there is a spectrum that we can move along. I'm going to leave behind for the moment the top and the bottom spectrums, and we're going to focus just on this middle one, which is, where is your attention during the interaction, during the conversation? So we will start with what we refer to as the me mental posture. In a me mental posture, the focus of your conversation, where you're placing your attention, is on yourself. Again, most of the time we do this unconsciously, but it's about either boosting our status within the group or with the other individual, or keeping a sense of safety, protecting ourselves. Now, with all 5 of these mental postures, it's not that one is good and one is bad, it's that there are appropriate times and inappropriate times for all of these. If I am being attacked unfairly, it may well be a case where I want to move to a me posture and either defend myself or take me and leave the situation if that's appropriate. However, most of the time when we use the me mental posture, it is about trying to boost our sense of status. We want to show that we're smart. We want to show that we're competent. We want to show that we're a good person. Whatever it may be, we interact in a way that tries to promote our sense of who we are and strengthen that so that we look good to other people. Me conversations are essentially all self-referencing. Now, many times, it doesn't matter. If you've gone to a party or if you're in some social situation and somebody says to you, you know, we had the most amazing vacation last year in Italy. I mean, we toured all over the place, drank great wine, saw the sights that only Italy can provide. And your response is, that sounds so cool. We actually went to New Zealand last year, and that, have you been to New Zealand? If you haven't been to New Zealand, you ought to go because our family just had the most wonderful time. Well, you know, and we come back with another self-referencing thing. Now, we tend to just call that chit-chat, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when we're in a conversation where it matters that we are building community, we are working together, we are making decisions together, if my mental posture is one of, I need to look good here, we're going to have trouble in that conversation using it. Now, here's a key fact with the mental postures framework. It's not so much the words you say, it's what's the underlying intent. Because we can use we-sounding words and still have a me intention. So in a conversation, when we say something like, you know, it's really important that we come together on this and that we find a decision that we're all really committed to. Now, what I think we ought to do is, and all of a sudden you're trying unconsciously, usually, most me conversations are quite unconscious, but you're trying to promote your sense of, look how smart I am. I came up with the decision that the group ought to adopt. That's a me conversation. Now, I'm going to show you a video clip. This video clip comes from the movie What About Bob? So I don't know if you've seen this comedy.
We've lost the sound.
Nothing.
Sound is back. We had lost the sound for about a minute and a half there, Scott.
Okay, we're waiting for sound from the video. We may have a technical glitch here, in which case this talk will be significantly shorter, so that's not a bad thing for you either.
It makes it a conversation.
Exactly. So I think I will move on. Is there any hope of getting the sound?
Ziggy, I have the whole house to fix, all the art to hang. I have no idea what I'm going to wear on the TV show. But I have stopped everything in order to teach you how to dive, because it is as important for me to see you dive as it is for me to appear on Good Morning America.
Oh, man, this is really precious.
Come on, take off your robe. Why are you always wearing black? What is it with you and this death fixation?
Maybe I'm in mourning for my lost childhood.
All right, come on, turn around. Toes at the edge, that's it. Remember what we learned last year, okay? 1, 2, 3, spring. Now, bend at the knees, bend at the waist, hands out, stiff as a board. 1, 2, 3, spring!
1, 2, 3, spring. Spring. Summer, fall, time to go, Dad.
I don't understand. Why won't you dive?
With all the horror that's going on in the world, what difference does it make?
So why do we call that a me conversation? It looks like it's actually about the boy in one sense. So why are we using this as a me conversation? What are you seeing there that makes it one? Oh, you have to repeat that apparently.
Oh, sorry. I think it's what the dad wants as opposed to what the son wants or perhaps needs.
Right. It's what the dad wants to have happen, not so much his son. What else makes it a me conversation?
Dad has taught him what to do, but the son hasn't internalized it.
Yeah, he is being instructed on what to do. It's not at all about the son's preferences, right? Deb, you were gonna...
Oh, I was just gonna say, it seems like it's in the context of the dad's life. So I have a TV show that I'm on, but this is more important than that. So it makes it sound like this is really important to me, you are really important to me, but really he's putting it in his own context, comparing it with something else that's going on in his own life.
Exactly. It is self-referencing. Even though it looks in a sense like it's about the boy, it's not about the boy, it's about him looking good as a father. This telling phrase where he says, "It is as important for me to teach you to dive as it is for me to be interviewed on TV." In other words, this is about him. It is not about his son. So again, we can be using the language of you or we, but the underlying posture is one of me. Now, as we move up the scale on our diagram, back to the slide deck. We move from me to it. Now, this conversation still has a lot to do with your own sense of self-esteem and showing how important you are and how smart you are, etc. But a key difference here is we're no longer entirely self-referencing. We're now talking about some issue, something, some it. So there's a sense in which it's a little bit external to us. You know, and again, let's say we're doing problem solving. I might have a particular idea as to what will solve this problem. And you have a different idea. And we end up having an interaction that's back and forth, trying to show whose idea is right and whose is wrong, who's smarter than the other. We're talking about some issue now. And a lot of our conversations are it conversations. We get into a discussion which then devolves into an argument about some topic, whether that is our opinion of particular politicians, whether it is what's going on in West Hill United and a decision that needs to make, whether that's just in our families, talking about where we're going to go for summer vacation. We get into these discussions that turn into arguments because we have an it mental posture where I am trying to show that I am right, I am smart, and you are stupid and wrong. Now, we would never say that, of course, but underlying the conversation, often that is what's driving the conversation. So, I don't know if any of you watch British TV, but Piers Morgan is a wonderful example of it conversations every single day. Virtually any interview on TV, like CNN does, you know, these panels where they have 4 people talking at the same time, they're all it conversations, and you can quickly see how they go bad. Here's a good example of that.
Why is it remotely patronizing for a man to open a door and say, please, ladies first?
I'm all in favour of good manners. I have 2 teenage daughters myself, and I spend a lot of time telling them to be polite. And I've got absolutely nothing against people giving up the odd seat or being kind of generally well-mannered. Where I think that the ladies first thing becomes quite patronising, and certainly a younger generation of women really think so. I did a kind of straw poll in my office yesterday, and the younger women feel really passionate about it, is because they feel it comes with a whole load of other assumptions. So the kind of man who might go, ladies first, or pull out your chair, or very much pay for dinner, is kind of expecting something back. It's an attitude.
Why would you think that?
It's an attitude towards women that women are...
You're just being a gentleman.
No, it's an attitude that they think women are rather kind of fragile, delicate vessels that might break if they're not kind of looked after in a very careful way. And that is patronising to a load of younger women. They feel they should be treated as equals.
In this modern day world where there's so much terrible things going on and we're all so busy, I think it is so refreshing and delightful for someone to actually take the time and open the door for you. It's nothing about belittling someone else or looking down on someone. It's about having manners, just, you know,
then it's about
polite.
intention.
It's about power, and it's about what the expectation is on women.
Not at all.
And the kind of women who love that are often the kind of women who very much define themselves through a male gaze, who define themselves by how men will think of them.
Oh, don't be.
Listen.
Can I just say?
Okay, that's enough of that. Conversations can be really fun to watch, but they're really painful to be in very often. So again, what did you see happening there that demonstrates this mental posture that we're talking about? Jean.
I saw people taking positions and digging themselves into an idea that they then have to defend.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. People take positions, and the tendency in conversations is you keep locking in tighter and tighter to your position and listen less and less. Now, they don't always end up in such chaotic kind of conversations. Often people know enough to take turns and wait till the other person's speaking, but we're not really listening, we're just waiting for the opportunity to present our ideas. Those are conversations. And so many of our conversations may start at either you or we, which is where we're going, but they can quickly devolve down into conversations. So let's move to the next one on the model, which is you conversations. Now, in a you conversation, my intent truly is to understand you, to try to understand where you're coming from, how you see the world, what your ideas are, what's important to you, how you are feeling, with a genuine intent not to fix anything, not to defend myself if you say something that I find a little hard to hear. My intent is genuinely just to understand you. Now, if you've ever gone to a therapist or you've had coaching or anything like that, ideally, your therapist ought to be continually in a you position. Their role is to be there for you to help you with whatever issues you are bringing. That's sort of the classic position, but it is hard for us in normal conversations to really stay in a you mental posture, particularly when somebody says something that either goes against what I believe or what I value or a strongly held opinion. Once that gets put on the table, it is so easy to slide back to and if in that conversation I feel I'm starting to get attacked, I will quickly then devolve even further back to me. So to stay in you is a really hard place, but it is so critical if we are going to build true community, which is developing the capacity to actually stay in a place of being open to the other person. Now, this can have really powerful effects. I want to show you a clip this time, which it's a little dated. It comes from back in 2016, I think it was, when Colin Kaepernick, an NFL football player, was protesting the way that blacks were being treated, particularly with police in the United States. And he started taking the knee during the national anthem. And it became a massive controversy. So in this clip, it's a CNN town hall. Anderson Cooper is interviewing a number of different people about this issue. One of them that he interviews is a man named Nate Boyer, who was a Marine at one time, and eventually actually played in the NFL for a very brief period of time. And you watch for the you posture that he brought to this conversation and with Colin Kaepernick, and what happened in the midst of that.
Nate, I want to ask you, you're a former Green Beret, served from 2005 to 2015, am I right?
Yes.
You wrote a public letter to Colin Kaepernick, and he actually responded, and you communicated with him, correct?
Right, yeah.
And so he originally was sitting during the national anthem. That upset you. I'm wondering just what you said to him, because a lot of people point to you as the person who suggested that he take a knee rather than sit.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't necessarily the gesture itself. It was just, that was the first person, you know, I guess publicly protesting the anthem that I recognized, that I noticed. And I'm a Niner fan, I was a Kaepernick fan, and it just really hurt me because of what that flag and anthem means to me, you know, my personal relationship with it. You know, that flag comes home and it's draped over coffins of our fallen brothers and sisters, and it's folded and handed to, you know, a spouse or a child of somebody. So for me, it just means something a little bit different. And so I was hurt. Initially, I was angry. And, but I was looking at our country right now and where we're at, and just the shouting, and everyone's so concerned with just being right and not listening to the other side, even when the other side seems crazy. Because when we're overseas, when we're in Afghanistan and Iraq, I don't agree with most of the customs and cultures, but I have to put that aside and swallow my pride and have a little humility and just say, you know what? I don't know what it's like to grow up where you grow up. You know what I mean? I just know my experience. And so I try to take that into account in that situation, because I don't know anything, I don't know what it's like to be anybody but Nate Boyer. And I never will, no matter what color or anything. And so for me, I just wanted to come with an open mind and just listen for once, because I have a bad habit of judging. I think everybody does. And I wanted to stop that in myself. And that's where that letter came from. And, you know, he reached out and we were able to sit down together for a couple hours before the last preseason game last year. And it was really cool to hear him just listen to and be very open-minded too, and just like, look, he's like, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt your brothers and sisters. I showed him text messages of friends of mine. Some of them were saying I was a disgrace to the Green Beret because I was even meeting with them. And some of them were like, I'm with you, man, but, you know, that really hurts me to see that, you know. And so I talked to him and I said, I think a knee, we both said, it was mutual. I think me, him, and Eric Reed, I think maybe taking a knee would be a little more respectful. It's still a demonstration. You're still saying something, but, you know, people take a knee to pray, right. You know, and so for me, it was like, it was a common ground at least to start from.
It's not just to be.
So what do you see there that's a you mental posture? Oh, sorry. Karen?
At first, he was angry at Colin Kaepernick, but then he sat down with him and talked about it. And so that's a you posture, because the two of them listened to each other to try and understand each other's point of view, and they came to a conclusion that Colin Kaepernick should kneel rather than sit.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? That Nate says at one point, I had to set all of that aside, all of his beliefs, how much the flag matters to him as a Green Beret. And he had to set that aside and demonstrate some humility. And I think that's kind of the key to being able to stay in a you posture, is that ongoing sense of humility. I really don't know what your world is like. I really don't live in your experience. You know, even in a family, none of us have the very same experience in our families. We all experience the family somewhat differently because of who we are, our role in the family. And it's really hard there even to have the humility to say, I really don't even understand you fully. Elizabeth, I just don't fully understand you. And that could be interpreted in different ways, I suppose. But being in the you posture requires one to set aside all of those triggers that we may feel when somebody says something that we really do disagree with. the tug is to go back to it. And to continue to stay in you takes tremendous focus. It takes intentional choice to say, let that go, stay here and stay open. That is hard work, but it is absolutely essential. And what I love about that video as well is that you begin to see one of the statements that you'll hear us say a lot if you were ever in our leadership programs is you, the you posture, is often the doorway to we. That idea of moving from sitting down during the anthem to kneeling during the anthem came out of both Colin Kaepernick and Nate Boyer listening to each other, both having a you attitude, which led to this discussion which was open and found a solution that both of them could live with. Now that does bring us to the next of our mental postures, the fourth mental posture, the we mental posture. In the we posture, we come into the posture, or into the conversation, with the assumption and the intention that together we are going to create something that neither of us can independently. We understand that we are intimately interconnected and reliant and dependent on each other, so we need to bring each other's best. So it certainly incorporates the you, that we are genuinely trying to understand each other, but we move beyond that to, so where can we go together here? It is a place of openness, not just to the other person, but openness to the future and to possibilities and change. That's the we posture. Now, I want to show you a clip. Again, this one is somewhat dated. It's when Jacinda Ardern was still the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And you may remember when there was a mosque in Christchurch, I think it was, that was attacked, and a number of people lost their lives there. Jacinda Ardern stepped up wonderfully, and in this clip you're going to see how she used a we posture to help bring healing in that kind of situation.
We gather here 14 days on from our darkest of hours. In the days that have followed the terrorist attack on the 15th of March, we have often found ourselves without words. What words adequately express the pain and suffering of 50 men, women and children lost, and so many injured? What words capture the anguish of our Muslim community being the target of hatred and violence? What words express the grief of a city that has already known so much pain? I thought there were none. And then I came here and was met with this simple greeting: Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. They were simple words, repeated by community leaders who witnessed the loss of their friends and loved ones. Simple words whispered by the injured from their hospital beds. Simple words spoken by the bereaved and everyone I met who has been affected by this attack. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. They were words spoken by a community who, in the face of hate and violence, had every right to express anger, but instead opened their doors for all of us to grieve with them. And so we say to those who have lost the most, we may not have always had the words. We may have left flowers, performed the haka, sung songs, or simply embraced. But even when we had no words, we still heard yours, and they have left us humbled, and they have left us united. Over the past 2 weeks, we have heard the stories of those impacted by this terrorist attack. They were stories of bravery. They were stories of those who were born here, grew up here, or who had made New Zealand their home, who had sought refuge or sought a better life for themselves or their families. These stories, they now form part of our collective memories. They will remain with us forever. They are us. But with that memory comes a responsibility. a responsibility to be the place that we wish to be, a place that is diverse, that is welcoming, that is kind and compassionate. Those values represent the very best of us.
So what do you see that's a we mental posture in that response to this tragedy? Hang on, Vern, we'll get the mic to you. There we go.
I think there was an assumption that her ideals and what she believed in was what the people in the crowd believed in.
Yeah. And very often in we conversations, we come back to core values that tie us together, that we know we all agree upon. And in we conversations, one of the skills is to be able to come to something that is bigger than both of us, that is rooted in our values and our commitments as a community, that will help us move beyond needing to defend ourselves, make ourselves look smart. It certainly incorporates the you mental posture, because I really have to hear where you're coming from. And even when we disagree, we can keep in mind the bigger picture that comes out of our values and our commitment to deepen our community. That's the we mental posture. Now there's one last posture I'm just going to touch on super briefly, because most of us rarely get there. And in terms of building community, it's great to have, but it's not necessarily something that you want to have or need to have all the time. There are a few people who seem to live in the we. Sadly, we lost Nelson Mandela a number of years ago. He was one of my heroes who just lived in the, I should say, the all posture, not the we posture. He lived in the all. But there are very few people that we see like that. And thankfully, in terms of building strong community, I don't think we really need to. If we can get the slides back again. I'm going to show you another clip that really demonstrates the all mentality, the all mental posture. And I'm going to just kind of leave it at that for sake of time. As I say, this is to kind of fill in your understanding of the whole model, but it's not necessarily something we have to become people who live in the all the time. All of us probably approach it at times, but it's rare to be there all the time. Here's a demonstration of it.
The word Ubuntu comes from a Southern Guni word or phrase that says, I am because you are. You are because we are. In other words, as human beings, there's a sense in which there is some connection and interdependence. We rely on each other. Let me start by saying that Ubuntu is not a political program. I also want to add that it is not, a religious, expression. Ubuntu is about our social awareness, a consciousness of the others, a consciousness of the fact that we all have a responsibility to ourselves as human beings, especially the vulnerable among us. But perhaps more importantly, we also have a responsibility to, the world around us, the totality of our environment. Did you know that 30% of food crops in the world need cross-pollination from bees? These tiny insects. So if you are going to destroy the bees or the earth, you are ultimately destroying yourself. So the principle of co-agency implies that we are co-creators. It relies on the recognition that we are interdependent in a balanced biodiversity. So it is that principle of co-agency that Ubuntu encourages. The awareness that our interdependence, that personhood moves beyond the relationship between humans and humans, but a relationship between humans and non-humans, precisely because we are implicated in their lives, and they are implicated in our lives. Even in the West, which thrives on the principle of individualism, there's a sense in which they agree that they're fundamental, basic human rights that each one of us owes to the community. I always like to make a distinction between individuality and individualism. Individuality gives you a sense of independence and freedom, and also a development of your own personal character. Individualism, to the contrary, is self-referential. It is about you, me, all the times. And the ego always takes over. In all human societies, the way we temper the personal ego, communities moderate those by constantly reminding you that you are not living in isolation. You belong to a family, you belong to a broader community, you belong to a community of your peers, and you also belong to the world, and you have a responsibility for that world.
This is Ubuntu and a wonderful demonstration of an all mental posture. And most of us reach there sometimes, but it's hard to live in that place. The key difference between we and all is that in the we mental postures, it's our group that is the focus. In the all posture, it's everything that's our focus. So as I say, for the purposes of building community, it's not necessary to always be in the all. Being in you and we is often sufficient. So how do we get there? That's the framework overall. But how do we actually get there? Well, if you look at the picture, you'll notice that there are these two other lines that I mentioned earlier. One is our view of reality. The more we are locked into that my way of seeing the world is the right way, the more we will be stuck in me and it mental postures. The more we can let go of that and begin to understand that there are multiple and adaptable ways to see what's going on and to understand what's happening, to a place where we realize our understanding of reality will always be imperfect, and therefore it needs to be in constant motion and constant updating. That's a developmental framework, and that's how we ultimately start moving along this mental postures framework. The bottom one is your sense of identity. People who are locked in me and it are there because they have a rigid sense of themselves, but it's also very fragile. And so there's that constant need to defend myself and show that I'm smart, show that I'm competent, show that I'm right, show that I am better than you, smarter than you, right when you're wrong. As we let go of that and we begin to move into a place where I understand that my identity is secure, I don't have to defend myself. And I can be flexible, therefore, in conversations because I can really open up to you without it being a threat to me. This allows us to move into the you and the we place. And ultimately, as you saw in that lovely video, to reach the all place, we need to have that sense of self where I get that I am truly interconnected to everyone and everything. Now, in other words, to use this framework well, it requires ongoing development. But there are some tools that we can use, and if you flip that page over, you will see on the back some suggestions that we're going to leave with you for how do we actually use these. And it's the you and the we that I want you to pay particular attention to. And this provides some structures that we can use when we go into a conversation and we realize, I want this to be a you conversation. Well, this reminds us, so what are the kinds of things I would say? What are the kinds of questions I should ask? How do I listen to this person? And what are the kinds of things I do in that conversation to do a you conversation well? Now, ultimately, it's about the internal posture, but these can be structures and ideas that help us translate that intention into an actual conversation. Same for the we. So I'm going to leave those with you, but here's the key takeaway, I think, if we're going to use this framework to strengthen our community. It's the statement that I made before: you is often the doorway to we. When we go into conversations and our intention is to strengthen the community in some fashion, whether that is sharing, whether that is decision-making, whatever it may be, coming to a place of you often will naturally lead to a place of we, as we saw in that Nick Boyer video. So if there's one principle to kind of take away, it's I'm going to become an expert at you mental posture conversations. And you will begin to find that over time, as hard as that is, requiring that sense of secure self and humility and openness to the other, often it magically starts transforming into we, which is what we need to build community. Ultimately, our capacity to create strong community depends on the character of our conversations. And I hope this has been a useful and helpful framework to think about in order to strengthen the ties that bind at West Hill United, whether in person or via Zoom. Thank you.
Honestly, at the risk of not saying and articulating what it is I think we have just experienced, I'm going to tell you how important it is that we're still connected with you, how important to us that it is, and I hope I'm speaking from the we perspective right now, that you have been you have been present with many years now, and you have been an underlining guide, walking alongside and maybe from behind, and now sometimes again in the front. And we're so much better because you're here with us still. So thank you for coming back to us. And I hope I'm not the only one that was feeling a little convicted in some of the information that you were sharing. If anyone else, by silent nod or raise of hand, anyone else go, oh, I've done that. I know exactly who I did that with. I know exactly when I did. So the tools that you've given us today are incredible, both in the knowledge and the listening and the ability to ask questions, and then the tactile tools that we can take home and hopefully guide us in our next conversation. So please, again, from West Hill, from the we, reaching for the all place, let's celebrate Scott's contribution to our time together. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We have one more song to take with us to go back out into the world. And may it be that now we know what we know, and we can choose to ignore it or not implement it, but we really can't unknow it. So here's to the next conversation. One more for the road. This is Bond of Love. One more time. And if we can make sure the volume's up high enough for us so we catch it. Thank you. Here we go.
We are joined together in a bond of love.
I think it's
with
the beginning.
cords of freedom and of duty. Connected in the spirit, our spirits are strong in a bond of wonder and of beauty.
Can we pause for a second?
Made by all of us.
Just pause for a second.
All of us fashioned.
I think what they're doing is they've taken us to the very beginning with all of the verses. And so we have the lyrics for that from the top of the presentation. I think that might be the guide that we're looking for. Because it's a very me position if it was just that voice singing stuff we don't know. Do you think you can find that, Sunny? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Here.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.